Back in the early 2000s, the Game Boy Advance was everywhere, and for good reason. It was a really magical handheld. The hardware was so capable and the library of games was so dense, you were pretty much destined to have a great time with the GBA. But this isn't just gonna be your average nostalgia throwback type video. Prepare yourself for the most unhinged Game Boy Advance shenanigans you ever did see. Everything from GameCube connectivity to TV mods to loading homebrew games off of paper cards to even more insane and esoteric nonsense. Welcome back to Planet Clue. It's time to get weird with the Game Boy Advance. The Game Boy Advance had a ton of accessories and peripherals, all sorts of cases and little lights you could snap onto the top of it. There were even Game Boy Advance video cartridges where you could watch cartoons on your Game Boy Advance, and they looked just fantastic. But likely the most iconic GBA accessory of all time was the link cable. If you were to link two Game Boy Advances together, you could play real-time multiplayer games or trade Pokemon with your friends. A lot of the multiplayer games on GBA only required a single game pack, and you could transfer the game data over the wire to the other GBA that doesn't have a game in. But there were quite a few multi-pack only Game Boy Advance multiplayer games, and you just had to hope that all of the stars would align, that you would have your GBA, your copy of the game, your link cable, and your friend having an additional copy of the same game. For as amazing as linking one Game Boy Advance to another is, what about linking a Game Boy Advance to something else? In fact, you could link the Game Boy Advance up to the GameCube using a special cable, and lots of games supported it, like a lot. For example, Wario World allows you to download a trial of WarioWare Incorporated to your Game Boy Advance. Sonic Adventure 2 was my absolute favorite as a kid, though. You could transfer a Chow from your Chow Garden to your Game Boy Advance, and you could take it on the go. You could feed them, play a few mini games, earn some rings, and when you were done, you could connect it back up to the GameCube and transfer all that progress back over. This absolutely rocked my world when I was a kid. I loved this so much. It felt like magic. Animal Crossing had some pretty amazing GameCube GBA link stuff too. You could transfer a pattern making program to your Game Boy Advance and work on your patterns while you were out and about, and once you got back, you could connect your GBA to your GameCube and transfer the pattern you worked on back to your save file. It must have been so rad to be designing Animal Crossing clothing patterns while waiting at the bus stop. That's amazing to me. All right, check this out. In The Legend of Zelda Wind Waker, if you connect the GBA to the GameCube and use the Tingle Tuner, it downloads a little program to your GBA to essentially add in Wii U-like second screen gameplay. You can have a second player navigate around the map, and Tingle will give hints to where items are in the game. They can also direct Link's vision to a certain spot on the map. The Tingle Tuner player can even drop bombs on enemies. This seems like such a perfect fit for the Wii U gamepad that I'm shocked it was cut for the HD remaster. Pac-Man Versus is a really ambitious GBA GameCube Link game as well, and it also feels very Wii U. The Game Boy Advance player plays as Pac-Man, and everyone else plays on the GameCube screen as ghosts that have to find Pac-Man. It reminds me so much of the Luigi's Mansion minigame in Nintendo Land. But yeah, Pac-Man Versus is an awesome party game, and having it use the Game Boy Advance means that the ghost players can't screen cheat to find Pac-Man faster, right? I love Pac-Man, and I love this game, it's so sick! Last and definitely not least, Nintendo brought the GBA linking to GameCube idea to its absolute limit with The Legend of Zelda 4 Swords Adventures. Each player uses a Game Boy Advance as a controller, and much like the Wii U, you're constantly looking up at the TV screen and then down at the little screen in your hands, and then back up at the TV screen. It's so cool. What a great idea. When a player goes inside a building, the interior shows up on the GBA screen. Or if you talk to somebody, their dialogue appears down there as well. I don't know if this game is good enough to be worth buying a bunch of GBAs and link cables to play it, but it is an incredible technological achievement from the time. Thankfully, it's all preserved with emulation, so you don't need to buy hardware to play it anymore. But wouldn't it be cool if I were able to capture the Game Boy Advance's screen so you, the audience, could have a clear view of it? Well, look who decided to show up. But before we go any further, it's time for the ad. This video is sponsored by Fabletics. Everyone I surround myself with knows that I live every single day of my life wearing Fabletics, and I need to tell you about the deals that are going on because you cannot and should not sleep on them. But before I can do that, I gotta tell you about the gear itself, okay? The fabric's lightweight, it's moisture wicking, and it has 4-way stretch. So whether I'm at the gym, out for a walk, or just running errands, I'm chilling and comfy the entire time. The fits are clean and the colors are bold controlled without being too loud, and everything is built to actually last. Reinforced stitching, anti-odor, the whole deal. I've washed these pieces over and over, and they still look brand new. Now here's the part I really need you to pay attention to. When you sign up to be a Fabletics VIP through my link in the description, new VIPs get 70 to 80% off your first order. That is not a typo. On top of that, you're looking at $19 pants, $10 shorts, and $7 tees. As a VIP member, you save up to 50% every single day. You get early access to new drops, VIP-only sales, and the flexibility to skip any month between the 1st and the 5th if you don't feel like shopping. This offer is for a limited time, and these sizes sell out fast, so don't wait. Use my link in the description right now to lock in that 70 to 80% off as a new VIP. It's also a pinned comment. You're gonna love it, trust me on this one. Thanks again to Fabletics for sponsoring this video, and now, on with the show. This is a Japanese Game Boy Advance TV out mod that was generously donated to my P.O. box, and it should, in theory, output your GBA screen to the TV via composite or S-video. I wasn't super optimistic about this device because it is from 2002 and it has visibly aged. Some of the contacts are rusted, the plastic feels very brittle, but I decided to give it a go regardless. But yeah, despite the age and the visible wear, oh my god, it actually powers on. I can't believe it. So you gotta take your GBA apart, you have to transfer it into a custom bottom shell that docks into this powered base thing. Got the capture all hooked up, and it displays this. Just this. Nothing else. To be honest, I didn't even think I would get this far. But yeah, I tried everything. I couldn't get the game screen to actually display. I cleaned all the contacts. I tried both the composite and S-video outs. I tried messing with the display ribbon cable. I tried different power outlets even. No dice whatsoever. And it sucks because I really wanted this to work. It would be so cool. The only other thing I can suspect is that this device might only be compatible with Japanese Game Boy Advances. I don't have one at hand, unfortunately, so I can't test that. But I'm just going to assume that this device has reached retirement age and doesn't want to clock into work anymore. I can't say I blame it. It has been 24 years. But thankfully, if I have the need to capture Game Boy Advance games on real hardware for whatever reason, I have this incredibly cursed gadget. This is a headless DS Lite with a top screen capture mod that goes out to composite. Normally, I don't care if I'm playing on real hardware or not. I have no problem with using emulators or Mr. FPGA or whatever, but the only way to travel these next few paths is with nothing less than the real deal. So, back in the Game Boy Advance's heyday, Nintendo released this weird alien gadget that you dock onto the top of the console, and it allowed you to scan dot codes printed on paper cards to load a game. You could also scan a small selection of Pokemon cards to see a Pokedex entry for them. It was really cool. In 2025, a bunch of homebrew game devs got together to create the Retro Dot Cards project, led by Matt Greer, and they sought out to create a whole series of homebrew games that were exclusive to the Game Boy Advance e-reader. By the way, I'm not sponsored by them or anything, I'm just a fan, okay? I like their stuff. It's a very unique feeling to be holding physical copies of homebrew games stored on paper cards. At first, I found it really annoying having to rescan the cards over and over until they worked, but it's because I was doing it wrong. If you go a little slower and you keep the bottom of the card consistently flat all the way across the slider, you can get them to scan perfectly in one try. Alrighty, let's take a look at each game. First off is Solitaire. As you would expect, it's a perfectly good solitaire game. It's plenty functional. Initially, I kept confusing the clubs and spades because the sprites are very small, but otherwise, this is an amazing accomplishment. Loading a homebrew game like this off of a literal piece of paper, unbelievable. Next up is Bomb Hunter. It's a very pretty Minesweeper clone. You can even play on massive grids that you can scroll the camera around. If I were any good at Minesweeper, I'm sure I'd have more to say about this one, but I am not, so I don't. Next up is E-Snake. It's a very feature-rich snake game. You collect the hearts to get longer, and once you collect a certain amount, the wall opens and you can progress to the next level. I was able to complete the whole game and even earn an achievement for doing so. This game is totally my favorite in the series. I love this one. Exo Attack is a horizontal arcade-style shmup with 3 playable characters, each with their own abilities. You have Bus, Spaceship, and Bathtub Man. Bus can shoot a laser across the screen, Spaceship can use a bomb that clears all the projectiles off the screen, and Bathtub Man has bubbles that gradually arc upwards. It's a simple but effective score-based shmup. You just gotta see how long you can last. I liked this one a lot, but I'm pretty bad at it. I love the addition of the online high score code. That is such a cool idea. And the last game is Franny Answers. I assume Franny is the dog of one of the developers. It's basically a magic 8-ball where you can pet the dog and give her treats. And leave it to me to figure out how to lose at Magic 8-Ball. I got a game over. I don't even know how that's possible. There's one more card in the series called Scavenger Hunt, but it's not a game in itself. It just keeps track of 4 global achievements across other games. I don't have the time to get them, but I'm amazed that they are able to keep track of variables across game cards. That's insane. I have no idea how they're able to do that. That's nuts. But yeah, if you're in the particularly niche market of wanting homebrew games for Game Boy Advance e-reader, be sure to check out Retro.cards. Okay, so I've got 2 more interesting things. They're technically for Nintendo DS, but, big but. Look at this. This is the Activision Motion Pack. It's literally a Game Boy Advance cartridge, but also not really. It's actually a Slot 2 option pack for DS. Now, this motion pack only works with 2 games, and they're both on the same cartridge, Tony Hawk Motion and Hue Pixel Painter. So, Tony Hawk Motion was totally panned by critics when it released in 2008. They mainly cited the lack of content and terrible controls as like the primary talking points. I personally have an advantage control-wise because I'm using a TV out mod, so I don't have to look at the screen I'm currently waggling. But the biggest problem I have is actually a technical one. The motion pack just doesn't want to work most of the time. Either the game won't boot because it says the motion pack isn't in when it is, or sometimes mid-game it'll just stop working and force you to reboot the console. But when I was able to get the game to work, it seemed pretty intuitive and fast and elegant. It just feels like an extreme sports game with motion controls, and that's what it is. The controls were easy to infer and the physics were nice enough. I couldn't get the game to function for more than maybe 10 minutes total, but my first impressions were decent. But yeah, like I said, there's another game on this same cartridge called Hue Pixel Painter, which I ended up really liking, actually. You tilt the DS around to move the little blob alien to connect the rainbowy dots on the ground, reveal all the 3D objects to complete the level. It's simple, it's fun, it works. It reminds me of a lot of like WiiWare games that I'd play back in the day. No complaints from me. I like it just fine. Oh yeah, also, in case you were wondering, if you put the motion pack into a GBA, it fits perfectly in the slot like it was born to be there. But when you turn it on, absolutely nothing happens. So yeah, there's that, in case you were curious. Okay, so since we're on the subject of TV out mods and slot 2 option packs, this is likely the strangest gadget to ever be born with a Game Boy Advance cartridge slot. Look at this thing, oh my god. This is Guitar Hero on Tour for Nintendo DS. It's a 4-button fret controller that you dock into the bottom of your DS. You slide your hand into the grip, and there's even a little guitar pick stylus so you can strum. And of course, I have to play it on the TV out modded DS Lite so you guys can get a clean capture. This is likely one of the most unhinged setups to play a video game I've ever seen. All that being said, Guitar Hero on Tour for DS, pretty fun. For as insane as it looks, the fret buttons, they feel nice. They're really consistent. The strumming is more elegant than you'd think. The only issue I have is that sometimes the fret controller will shift in the GBA slot and disconnect for just enough time for it to stop working. In the same way that the motion pack does, it's annoying. But that's likely more a result of these devices aging than anything else. At the time, I'm sure this was awesome to play Guitar Hero while out and about or on a car trip, but can we Guitar Hero on Game Boy Advance? The answer is no, you cannot. But yeah, it's weird. The cartridge slot doesn't fit in any Game Boy Advance. Like, it's too loose. It slides all around. So, you know, naturally it's not gonna do anything when we turn the Game Boy Advance on. But hey, it was worth a try. I guess today I learned that the DS Game Boy Advance slot and a Game Boy Advance slot is a little different. But yeah, I don't think we're gonna top this. Hopefully me making this video has saved you from having to buy all this hardware yourself. The Game Boy Advance and DS were the absolute peak of handheld gaming, and I hope that someday modern video games will return to being as strange as they were back then. Thank you to everyone on patreon.com/clue. If you've got any other esoteric gadgets or gizmos you want me to look at, please consider sending them my way via my P.O. box. And speaking of that, welcome back to Love Letters. Let's check out the stuff people sent to my P.O. box. Thank you to Earth Oreo 64 for the Game Boy Advance games and 2 lovely letters. They ask why I don't do documentaries more often. It's because they take a massive amount of time and research, and YouTube is not my only job, but I do have a documentary showcase type video about VTech coming down the pipeline, so stay tuned for that. They also ask why I never did a part 2 to the Pump It Up restoration. It's because the reception to that video was just awful. Like, people didn't seem to agree with the format of me learning as I went. I think maybe it's because it put too much of a spotlight on me messing things up, and maybe that was frustrating to watch. I think what people want from a video like that is for me to be speaking from a position of authority. They wanted me to already be good at arcade cab restoration before documenting it. Fair enough. That being said, I have spent the past 5 years studying my arcade hobby TV on my own time. I'm currently on my 4th dance machine restoration now. So the next time I restore an arcade dance machine on YouTube, I will have all the answers ready to go and it will be glorious. No promises on that one. I have no idea when that video is going to come out. Thank you to Michael for the games from the extremely rare V-Baby system to be featured in my upcoming VTech video. I hope you stay awesome as well, my friend. Thank you to Anonymous for the many Pokemon cards, some sort of Pokemon spinner thing, these dope Parappa and Lemmy pins, the sealed pack of 1993 Super Mario Bros. Movie trading cards. You're insane. Oh my god, this is exactly my cup of tea. I can never open this. And of course, the lovely letter. They ask if I like Super Mario Bros. Movie 1993 and amazingly bad movies like The Room. Yes, I am an esoterica appreciator. I love both a lot. They ask if I was ever a hardcore fandom goer. Yes, I was indeed 13 years old at one point in my life, and I loved fanfiction and all that stuff. Thank you for all of the interesting items. I greatly appreciate you, Anonymous. And finally, thank you so much to Sebastian for sending me this Japanese TV mod. I'm sorry that it didn't work, but it was really cool. Thank you, viewer, for sticking around for so long. I love you, I appreciate you, and I will see you again, hopefully soon. Ciao.